Hey, what is going on, guys? It is Austin with Gone on 60. I'm in my 2022 Toyota Supra. If you guys are thinking about buying a Supra, do it. However, there's a few things that you guys should just be aware about that are happening with Supras, or things that you should consider when you're looking to buy one of these cars. So one of the things that you guys should be aware of if you're buying a Toyota Supra. Now, some of the first generation models with the lower horsepower didn't really struggle from this, but around 2020, 2021 models, and even some into the 2022s, obviously with the Toyota Supra, you're not gonna be able to pull over to the gas station and measure your oil on the car. It is all measured electronically. And there's several owners and several threads where the Supra has known to consume way more oil than it should, even after just a couple thousand miles to add oil. Some argue, hey, that's just typical of a BMW. Some say that's not normal. Some don't have the issues. There are some instances where people have had scoring on their cylinder walls, so it really just varies. Obviously, you guys can see where I am at mile-wise, 1,800, and so far my engine oil level is okay. It's fine. However, a lot of people, after a few thousand miles after their first oil change, they are getting the warning that they need to put more oil into their car, which it shouldn't be burning through that much oil. Now, obviously, you know, BMWs, their cars are known to burn oil, especially turbocharged cars. They're known just in general to burn oil, but some people are having an issue with that. In some instances, Toyota has actually had to replace some of the engines on the Supra. They've had to replace some of the B58s. So it's not a plague across the board. However, if you look it up, oil consumption problems, Supra, do some research on it. You guys are going to find it. So another weird thing to kind of consider, or just something to consider in general, in buying a Supra, I haven't had this issue because I'm at such low miles, but this car, from my understanding, people chew through tires pretty quickly. I think that's normal for a performance car. I think that's very normal for any rear-wheel drive car that has a lot of power in it. However, it does seem to me that popping tires, replacing tires has become quite common in this car. Now, it could also depend on where you live. It could depend on your driving style. There's a lot of factors that determine wear on a tire. However, I can't remember if it was Motor Trend or who did it, but it was a major publication where they did, you know, they had the Supra for 20, 30,000 miles, and it did awesome. It did really well. It lasted really well. However, they kept having tire issues, either a tire being blown out or, you know, tread wearing too fast on the car. That is something that I've seen quite common. Getting into this car, I haven't had any problems with, but you guys might. You almost kind of have to just like sit and fall into it. But there's been people with track helmets on that have hit their head on top of the roof. So here's me just getting in the car. You really just kind of have to duck and fall into it, and you're in. But a lot of people have had that issue getting into the Supra. I haven't, but you guys, it's not like getting in a Honda Accord. It's a sports car, so you guys should expect that. However, you kind of have to sit low and fall back in. If you guys have a helmet, it's going to be really easy to hit your head on this. And as you guys look, I'll show you guys. You see how wide kind of the door sill area is? So really you're having to come way further into the car. And some people might have an issue with that. I haven't, because I've been used to my Camaro before this, but that might be something that might be weird for you guys. Now, another thing, and you guys should all know this, if this interior looks familiar to you, it's because it should be. It is a BMW's interior. It's BMW's infotainment. Now, that shouldn't alarm you. It shouldn't. There's a lot of great things about it, but from the chimes when you get into the car to just gauges, everything, especially kind of this section here, it is all made by BMW. It's all BMW, and it's a great partnership that those two companies had. However, if for whatever reason you don't like BMW, it might be something that takes you back, but I think it helps for the refinement. I think a lot of this is, for the most part, pretty nice. But if you guys aren't familiar with this brand and you just get in it and you're like, why does that sound, why does those chimes sound familiar? Why does all of this look so familiar? Well, it's because it is. It's a BMW. If you're like me, I'm about 6 feet, but I like to kind of, sit back, sit low. I like to be comfortable. And I sit as low as I possibly can in this car. But one thing I don't like, or that you should be aware of, is if you're probably taller than 6 feet, depending on where you want your seat, you're either going to be a lot closer to the front and sitting up high, or you're going to be like me and your seat rub on this back bar as you kind of bounce around and kind of go around the road. So just kind of get used to it, but not a deal breaker. But you do hear kind of that creak and rattle a little bit. Holy shit. Woo! Another thing to consider is, I think it's gotten a lot better than 2-3 years ago. 2-3 years ago, people were very confused and dealerships were very confused in terms of servicing these cars. Do I take it to BMW? Do I take it to Toyota? Who do I take it to? At the end of the day, take it to Toyota. However, early on when these cars first came out, there were problems in terms of who had the parts, or, certain products that BMW needed to supply, certain products Toyota needed to supply. So just know it's not going to be probably over seamless when it comes to maintenance if you have to take it to a dealer working on it. I think where we're several years into the Supra now, you're not going to have that problem, but just something to be aware about, that if you guys are taking it to a dealer, you are getting a part fixed, you are getting a part replaced, that depending on the circumstances, it might increase your wait time or it might cause a little bit of confusion in the process. So this hasn't been a problem for me, but maybe it is for some of you. I kind of laugh at this one, but if you guys are expecting the air vents on this car to be functional, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Now, I think unless you track a car, unless you're taking your car to the track, you're not going to notice the difference that functional or non-functional vents make. This car is awesome just in terms of its styling, but I would say 90% of the vents on this car, from the hood to the door, they're not functional. They're purely for looks, doesn't cool off the brakes, doesn't provide really anything other than just looks. Toyota, BMW, whoever decided to snap that piece of plastic on, didn't make them functional. Now, if you guys are super worried about that, I get it. Every major reviewer seems to knock that on the Supra. But at the end of the day, guys, show me a graph of how much difference that makes for your average person, unless you're taking it to the track. But something for you to be aware about, not that big of a deal. If you're not used to the size of the Supra, this is really kind of your visual that you guys get coming around the car. It is a sports car. Sports cars are small, they're nimble, they're not meant to have a lot of space. If you guys are coming from a fishbowl, it might be really difficult to see in here, according to you. I don't think it is. If you adjust your mirrors properly, you can see that I have plenty of great visibility, but that might be something that bothers you initially. The last two things, I love audio stereo systems. I'm pretty picky, but at the end of the day, this has the worst bass stock stereo system I've ever experienced in a car. Those speakers, I've eaten glazed donuts bigger than that speaker on the bottom. You obviously have some speakers back here, but this car is very, very much a letdown in terms of audio. Normally, the speakers are good enough in these cars for me just to throw a powered subwoofer in it and call it a day, but it's extremely weak in terms of just the power. It's really pretty sad. And that's even if I lower my standards some. Like, for me to even enjoy listening to the music, it has to be almost 3/4 of the way up just for me to even somewhat enjoy it. But it's very lackluster. It's very disappointing. These speakers back here rattle even at that. And I have the bass just set at, I think, +1, so it's not like superly aggressive. And the last thing, digital gauges. If you guys are somebody who wants analog, this is not the car for you. When I mean analog, I mean physical gauges that move. This car is all digital. From when your light comes on to say you need gas, like, it is all digital. It's just, everything in here is digital as I flip through some different settings. It is pretty cool. You know, the gauge cluster, it's kind of like a, you know, it's kind of like half in, half out. Pause. But at the end of the day, it's extremely digital. I wish they did some stuff on here that maybe made it feel a little bit more analog, but it's kind of interesting when you get down to empty, you get this like little icon that pops up that says fuel reserve. So it is a little bit goofy. If you guys are someone who doesn't like kind of an all digital car, I would say this really isn't for you. One last thing that you guys should be aware about, if you're ordering one of these cars, it's probably, you know, it depends on the side of the fence that you sit on. This car doesn't leave a lot of room for optimization. You have a package that you pay for that gives you everything. It gives you leather seats, it gives you Apple and Android CarPlay, it gives you blind spot monitoring. You're not going to be able to kind of pick and choose here and there the options that you want on the car. Sure, you can maybe get, you know, a different color of leather. You might be able to, you know, adjust some stuff. But when it comes to the cars I've owned previously, this is probably the most restricted car in terms of the ordering process, in terms of just speccing a car out. You're basically going to check maybe 1 box, maybe 2 box, unless you just want to add a floor mat or something like that. Just very basic, but there isn't a whole lot in terms of just packaging on this car. You could take it for what it is. Maybe some like that, maybe some don't. Maybe some like the fact that it's just super easy, it's super clean, it just removes it all out. You know, I came from the Chevy world where with a Camaro, gosh, you had so many different flavors and so many things you can option out, but might be something you might want to look into. Most of these cars, not all, but most, Toyota is going to install paint protection film for you, and it's not very good. It's very cheap. I want to say the dealer installs it. I've kind of heard mixed things on it, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't know exactly who at the end of the day is installing it, but it's really cheap. It's not very good. And if you guys know anything about detailing cars, you don't want the manufacturer, you don't want the dealership touching your brand new car, your paint, because if they don't clean the paint properly before putting that on there, it can ruin the paint underneath it, can scratch it, can make it worse. If it's a really light film and you guys think, oh, hey, that's great, it's going to be awesome, and then a rock chip goes right through it. I have Expel paint protection film on the front half of the car. I highly recommend it for this car. You are, based on where you're sitting, going to catch a lot of stuff. I already kind of caught, I caught a rock chip. I don't know how well you guys can see it. I got it fixed, but this car sits really low. It's a rock magnet. But just know with Toyota, there's a couple options that they almost put on every single car. It's the carbon fiber mirror caps and it is paint protection film. Luckily on this car, they didn't have that installed. They did have the carbon fiber mirror caps, which I actually think look nice. But if it were me, based on what I know in detailing cars, the paint protection film, don't pay for it, guys. Do not pay for it. If you guys watch Everyday Driver, they ordered the paint protection film on their Toyota GR86. They really regret doing it. If you want to get your car protected, take it to a professional shop that can do a really good job for you guys on these cars, because you're paying all that money. You don't want it installed incorrectly without prepping the paint first. And number two, you want it to do its job, which is protecting the paint. All right, guys, so there you have it. Those are just some things that if you're buying one of these cars, kind of weird, maybe a little bit different, or maybe you should just be aware about. If I missed something, guys, let me know. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've missed several things, but those are just some things that I think probably if you're buying one of these cars, you should consider. I think it's something to note down. I think it's something to consider, but at the end of the day, you're buying a performance car, and this is exactly what it is. You guys will love it. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.